So let's get into some fantasy football, you guys. Fantasy football woes is correct. So for those of you who are in a fantasy football league, team, dynasty, whatever the setup is, my condolences to your roster, because 9 out of 10 times, or what I can suspect is your team is really hurting, pun intended, just because of all the injuries that have taken place right now since the start. I mean, we got Christian McCaffrey on IR. We have Deebo Samuel now out for a few weeks, quote. Cooper Kupp on IR now. Tua's out, of course, on IR due to concussions, as we talked about. Joe Mixon might be missing time because of an ankle injury from a hip tackle, by the way. That was on, I think that was on the Sunday Night Football that happened with the Bears and the Texans. Now that I'm recalling, I wanted to say the Bengals, but that's not right. A.J. Brown, of course, is potentially out for a few weeks because of a hamstring injury. Evan Ingram was a late scratch on Sunday morning due to a hamstring injury. Isaiah Pacheco's potentially out for 6 to 8 weeks, potentially longer because of a broken fibia. Of course, Hollywood Brown is out potentially for the regular season, which I did mention a couple of weeks ago about players you wanted to avoid. Hollywood Brown was one of them. It had nothing to do with injury. I mean, I did mention that he's an injury-prone receiver, but it was more or less of like the production and the receivers, I think, that would flourish a little bit more in this Chiefs offense. But nevertheless, I don't want to be right on this aspect, but Hollywood Brown is out for at least the regular season, according to reports. Puka Nacua, as we talked about last week, he's out for at least 5 to 7 weeks because of a knee injury. Kenneth Walker missed Sunday's game, potentially might miss this upcoming week with a chest injury. And that's not all. I know that there's more that were added to the injury report that I did not put on here, but that's tough. Like, I can tell you right now, I'm in 6 leagues. I fortunately went 5-1 in my 6 leagues, and almost every league I have has at least one or multiple of these players that are out injured. I forgot to put on here Jordan Love, which we all knew about last week. In one league, I have Jordan Love out. I have Deebo Samuel out. I fortunately don't have A.J. Brown, but I do have Kenneth Walker. So I have 3 prominent players. Oh, and David Njoku and Jake Ferguson. I have them in the same team that I'm mentioning about Deebo Samuel and Kenneth Walker. And right now, my bench looks like an emergency room with how many people are out or with injury designations. And so the league in particular I'm in is a super flex, so I can put a quarterback in there. Of course, Jordan Love is out for the next few weeks. So, of course, I've been using that super flex for other positions, but the one position I had used it on was on a receiver, and it was for Deebo Samuel, ironically enough, and now he's out. So now I'm having to figure out what I'm going to do now for a player. And I'm at the point right now where I don't want to drop any of these players because they're out for the next few weeks, because of course, when they come back, they're going to be very productive. I just have to get by the next few weeks without having them, which is the difficult part. But what I wanted to do is, talking about fantasy woes and injury players, is I wanted to give you guys 3 potential waiver wire replacements that I would recommend that you target for some of these replacements. If you have players that you can drop that you don't need, that you can pick these players up, I would recommend it. And I'm going to give you for running back, quarterback, receiver, and tight end. So basically the 4 major positions in fantasy football. And the players I'm going to name off are going to be based off ESPN availability. And that's just easiest for me, just because I have several ESPN leagues. I'm on the ESPN website right now as I'll go over the week 3 over under numbers and stuff like that. So ESPN is kind of more of like my go-to. So this may not be true for a sleeper, NFL, Yahoo, whatever other fantasy platform you use. I'm basically going off of ESPN. So these are my waiver wire recommendations for your fantasy team. So leading off in the quarterback position, the 3 names I have is Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield is available in about 40% of leagues right now, according to ESPN. So he would be a good pickup if you've got an injury to, Jordan Love, as I mentioned. If you've got a quarterback that's kind of struggling right now, he might be one that you want to maybe take a look at, just because he's got a really good rapport with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and that Bucs team is actually pretty good. And, who would have thought? I did not predict them to be 2-0 good at this moment and beating teams like the Lions. Sam Darnold is available in about 90% of leagues, according to ESPN. I think he's a safe bet to put on your roster for a waiver pickup, just because, with Justin Jefferson on the team, which, by the way, he was also injured, and fortunately, it doesn't look like he's going to miss any time. But moving on to the major point is Sam Darnold had a very good game against the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers defense is tough. Yes, they're going through injuries, but it's mainly on the offensive side of the ball. So the fact that we get to see Sam Darnold have a good game against the Giants, which it's the Giants, and continue that same performance against the 49ers, and not only continue that performance, but look even better. And I can only imagine the steps that he will take forward in the following games, as the Vikings are playing. Excuse me. The Vikings are playing in the week 3. Where is it at? They're playing Houston Texans in Minnesota. So I think that'll be a fun game. So I'm curious to see how Sam Darnold will do, but I think he's worthy of a roster pickup. And of course, Derek Carr, former Las Vegas Raider, former Fresno State Bulldog great. Derek Carr, he is actually available in over 90% of leagues, according to ESPN. He had 2 games back-to-back where he had multiple touchdowns. He's very efficient. So the last 2 games, he hasn't gone over like 230 yards, I think, passing, but he's had multiple touchdowns in both games. And honestly, if it wasn't for the Saints having all-out, routes in the first 2 weeks, he probably would pass for over 300 yards in both those games. So I do imagine that, the next game that they go against, where it's against Philadelphia in New Orleans, I think that he will have another really good game. Will they blow out the Eagles? I don't think so, but I do think that Derek Carr is definitely in consideration for a player that you might need to replace Tua with, if that was your number 1 quarterback. And if you're someone that doesn't draft backup quarterbacks, I mean, that's up to you. But I think Derek Carr, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield are 3 choices. I think if you're needing a quarterback or a filler or something, that's a good one. Those are some good quarterbacks that I would recommend. Running back position. So I have Zach Charbonnet, which is the backup running back for the Seahawks. He's not quite as available in other leagues as some of these other players. He's only available in about 25% of ESPN leagues. So if you're in a league that doesn't have him, it would definitely be within your benefit to pick him up, because who knows how long, Kenneth Walker III is going to be out, if he is out. And also too, the sharing opportunities. I can't imagine that they're going to run Kenneth Walker 100% of the time. I do imagine there will be some share shifting there. And I would anticipate that Zach Charbonnet would be a great player to put as like a handcuff, or if you need like a filler for a flex spot, or if you got some running back woes, like, you don't have Christian McCaffrey. If he's available, it'd probably be a good opportunity to pick up, because I imagine that I would imagine that Jordan Mason, is not available in a majority of leagues now, just because with the whole Christian McCaffrey news. Another running back I would really consider that probably a lot of people should look at picking up is Ty Chandler of the Minnesota Vikings. Aaron Jones is what some would say the number 1 running back there, but he had a couple of fumbles and he did not have the best of games. And you had Chandler, who had a multiple touchdown game in this one, and I think he went over 100 yards going against San Francisco, which is huge because they have a really competitive run defense. And the fact that Ty Chandler was able to have over 100 yards in rushing and be as effective as he was, I think he'd be someone that you would be interested in having on your team, especially if you're in a deeper league and you need some running back talent. I think he's one of them. Another one in the running back position would be Braylon Allen of the New York Jets. He showed a lot of talent when it was share shifting with Bryce Hall, which he might not be obviously the number 1 running back, but of course what he'll do is he'll do a lot to do the extra support work and give, a lot of, he'll definitely give Bryce Hall a lot of breaks to where you can rely on him. And this could be very much like a Cleveland Browns kind of situation where you have Kareem Hunt and you have Nick Chubb. And, in some cases you can start them both and they'll both be productive. So I think Braylon Allen is a running back that is worth considering and adding and seeing if he can be productive or if you need a roster fill in, just because of how well he did against Tennessee Titans, even though they had Breece Hall as well. I think Braylon Allen is a good pickup and is a good stash.
Drew Coat Sports Talk is powered by StreamYard.
Want to take your podcast to the next level? Use StreamYard. It's the easiest way to record, stream, or produce high-quality episodes, whether you're solo or with guests. Plus, when you sign up today, you'll get a $10 credit to get started. Use the link in our bio. Don't miss out. StreamYard is your key to seamless podcasting. Now, in the wide receiver positions, I have Alec Pierce of the Colts, who is, I would say you should look into adding. He's available in over 80% of ESPN leagues. Rashid Shaheed, of course, with the New Orleans Saints, is available in only 30% of leagues, so you might want to pick him up pretty quickly. Obviously, his rapport with Derek Carr is improving because he was known as a big play receiver last season with Derek Carr when they would throw long pass plays, and now they're doing it again in back-to-back weeks nonetheless. So I definitely think he's a receiver that should be looked at to adding and potentially be a flex or a fill-in for any injured receivers you have. Quentin Johnson of the LA Chargers is one I think people should start looking at. He has gotten increased target shares each of the last 2 weeks, and it looks like if he continues this trend, he could be their new number one receiver. I know that they had Lan McClunky, I think is the rookie's name. Obviously, they have Josh Palmer, who's probably a good productive receiver, but probably best as a 2. Quentin Johnson, if he can just catch the ball pretty reliably, he very much could be the number one receiver in this offense, which already is very good with their pass protection, their run blocking, and with having J.K. Dobbins as their lead running back, who has back-to-back weeks of multiple 100-yard games. So I think that having a Quentin Johnson on the team would probably be something to add, because I think as the season develops, and again, if you need an add-in real quick for an injured player, I think as the season wears on, I think Quentin Johnson will be a bigger part in this offense for the Chargers. So I think that's one to look at. And for the tight ends has been rough for this season, really outside of Brock Bowers and who's the other tight end that's been kind of functional. I think that's pretty much it. I mean, tight end play has been very spotty, so it's hard for me to say who you should or shouldn't pick up, just because at this point right now, who knows who's going to go off. But these are the 3 that I would say are probably safe to add if you needed a tight end to fill in. Zach Ertz with the Commanders, he shows a really good connection with Jaden Daniels. Multiple catches last week, and I think he had over 10 plus fantasy points. And he's getting a very good amount of targets from Daniels, which is good because that means he's relying on his tight end, which most quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks, do, is they rely on their tight ends as the safety blanket. Jonnu Smith with the Miami Dolphins, he had a lot of really good catches in the Bills game. Again, some of these are when Tua did go out after his concussion, and so this is with Skylar Thompson production essentially. But I definitely think that Jonnu Smith is a good tight end that could probably be very productive in this offense for multiple weeks, regardless of the quarterback that's playing here. So I think it's worth an add to have Jonnu Smith, especially if you need someone to fill in. Zach Ertz is available in 93% of leagues, and Jonnu Smith is available in about 97% of leagues. So those 2 are both available. Hunter Henry with the New England Patriots is another tight end that I think you might want to think about adding, because he's showing a good rapport with Jacoby Brissett, and he had a really good game. The Patriots this past week, and I think Hunter Henry is almost coming back into form when he was with the Chargers, because when he was with the Chargers, he was a fantasy beast in terms of the tight end position. And I think if Hunter Henry can channel all that back, or at least the Patriots can focus on Hunter Henry being that type of player again, I definitely think that he's worthy of an add. And plus, with some of these tight ends almost producing little to no points, it doesn't hurt to add Hunter Henry, especially if you're someone like me who has David Njoku who's out and you don't want to drop him. Maybe you're stashing TJ Hawkinson and you don't want to drop him. Jake Ferguson, if he's not ready to go yet and you need a tight end filler, these 3 I think would be pretty good fillers if in my opinion. And Hunter Henry is available in over 90% of ESPN leagues as of today. So those are my fantasy waiver targets for your fantasy teams and fantasy woes that you are going with your injured players. And I know for sure that it's it's hard out there for everyone. So if you're someone like me in who has multiple leagues and multiple different players, these are a lot of different players that I'm kind of looking at depending on what my needs are. For the most part right now, I think it's running back for a majority of my leagues. I'm looking to just shore up because wide receiver is a deep pool of talent. So you can probably get a receiver that's going to give you decent production, not like CeeDee Lamb production, but it can be serviceable. It can be, a player that can get you like 4 catches for, 40 to 50 yards and get you almost 10 plus points depending on the matchup. And, that's essentially what you would like in a receiver, but there's so many of those options that, as long as you pick a good team that's got good offensive weapons, maybe the matchup is pretty good, you can get lucky in getting a good quality receiver in that respect. But running back is getting a little trickier just because not a lot of teams focus on running the ball, and a lot of the team running backs have their running back by committee is down to 2 players. And even when they are on a snap count or on a share snap on the field, you can see that there is one running back that is maybe favored in the run game specifically or in the screen game than the other. So really the handcuff that you're picking up is maybe for injury. And the ones that I gave are ones that have upside to them if you're looking for someone of backup that is going to be productive in their respective offense. So those are the waiver wires that I would recommend that you guys target.